Right. So we have discussed about the different patterns of the classification, that how we can classify the animals. First, we have discussed about the we can classify the animals on a cellular level organization, or sorry, level of organization, in which we can classify the at cellular level, at tissue level, and then organ and organ system level. Another pattern that is on the classification basis of animals is that it is the coelomic basis, or it is also we can classify on the digestive tube. Now, the major thing which I want to discuss about right now, because it can be clear demonstrated, or we can say it can be clear understand by the only video lectures, but somehow for coelomic level and for the layers level, as well as like diploblastic and triploblastic, and even though for the digestive system, we can also we have to use the whiteboard. And even inshallah in further lectures we will discuss kingdom animalia in detail. I will make the lectures on kingdom animalia in very crystal clear concept, inshallah. So we have to discuss about the symmetry. Like whenever I talk, or we talk, that whenever we can cut the organism into equal halves, or anything that can be cut into equal halves, we can, it shows the symmetry, it has some symmetry. Or even though if a thing cannot be cut even into a equal halves, or evenly, it don't show any symmetry pattern, we call it asymmetrical. So first of all we should discuss the asymmetry, that in kingdom animalia there is asymmetrical organisms or not. First of all, you should know the little hierarchy of the kingdom animalia. That kingdom animalia starts from the phylums Poriferans, or we can say sponges. So porifera are the simplest phylum that found in the kingdom animalia. Then poriferans, then there are the coelentrates, or we can say the ctenophora, and then platyhelminthes, escalamenthes, then annelids, arthropod, mollusk, chinom, hemi, and chordata. These are the major hierarchy of the kingdom animalia. The simplest one is the kingdom phylum sponges. So what about the phylum sponges? I am telling you that asymmetrical are those organisms or those animals that has no any symmetry, that we have no any plan to cut that organism into equal halves. Whenever we cut the organism, it would divide it into unequal halves or unequal parts. So this is asymmetrical animals. So what are the examples? Of course, you might be thinking that okay, every evolutionary perspective, that everything or evolute or organize in from simplest to the complex level. So all the simplest organism shows the asymmetrical level. It is true, but I want that my students have very clear concept that not all the sponges are asymmetrical. You should say most of the sponges or most of the poriferans are asymmetrical, but you know there is exception. Science without exception is not beautiful. Exceptions is the beautiness of the science. So जो हमारे पास sponges है, leucoselinia and cycon, it shows the radial symmetry. It is not asymmetry, even though it belongs to the kingdom phylum poriferans, but it don't show any asymmetrical patterns. They shows radial symmetry, Cycon and Leucoselinia, and even though these names are mentioned in your textbook. One more exceptions. There is a snail. You know snail. Snail belongs to the mollusk, and mollusk are the very modern than poriferans. Not so much modern, because still and they are under the chordates. Under the chordates mean they are. I think they are mollusk, and then echinoderm. Then they are, because they are invertebrate. Snails are invertebrates, but these are more modern than the poriferans. So they should be the bilateral, because one thing remember, write it down somewhere, from platyhelminthes to the phylum chordata, platy to chordates, all are bilateral. Generally all are bilateral, but there is exceptions. So in asymmetrical there is snails also. Actually on the larval stage snails are bilateral, but as the time passes they form torsions. Due to torsion mean actually their shells, their shells should be coiled or taut. Due to this reason snails are considered as, at adult stage they considered as asymmetrical, but at larval stage they considered the bilateral symmetry, they have the bilateral symmetry. So this is asymmetrical. Asymmetrical are those animals that cannot be divided into equal halves, one thing, and the examples are most of the sponges, not all sponges, even though I think in your textbook mentioned that the porifera or the kingdom of phylum porifera or the sponges are asymmetrical, but not all sponges. Leucocelini and Cycon are the example of the radial symmetry. They show the radial symmetry, but most of the major rest of the sponges show the asymmetrical pattern. And one more exception in the phylum mollusk, that snails at adult stage this shows asymmetrical due to the torsion of their shell or of their shell. Now this is the asymmetrical. Now come to the symmetrical. I am telling you that from above the poriferans all has symmetry, but symmetrical, those organisms that can be divided into halves. Now this is the there is a kinds, there are types of the symmetrical, like we have the radial symmetry, we have the biradial symmetry, and then we have bilateral symmetry. Now listen very carefully, this is very interesting, and most of the students and even the most of the teachers don't know about what is the radial symmetry. Before radial symmetry we have spherical symmetry. Spherical ball is spherical and radial symmetry. If I am telling the literally, literature wise, if you see the meaning of the spherical and the radial symmetry, you think it is same. How? I have no any round object. Just suppose if this is a round object or this is a ball, and even whatever the plane you cut that ball will divide into equal halves. This is the spherical. Either cut like this, either cut like this, either cut like this, either cut like this, or like just consider an apple or ball and you cut wherever, it divides into equal halves. This is spherical symmetry. Wall is the example of this. But what does it? How we differentiate between the radial symmetry? Even though your teachers and you studied in the book that radial symmetry is also same. That whenever you cut the organism or animal from any plane, it divides into the equal halves. This is radial symmetry. This is radial symmetry. Like if this is a animal, just consider this is a animal, round, spherical shape, round shape, oval shape, any organism, and you divide into like this and this and this, equal divides, and you can say it is radial symmetry. This is true, but more good students does not agree with this type. Actually, whenever you talk about the radial symmetry, it belongs to the spherical symmetry, or it something like the spherical symmetry, but because in kingdom Animalia we cannot include the volvox, so we call it radial symmetry. Radial symmetry is a symmetry whenever you cut the organism from any plane, any plane mean either this, either this, either this, from any side. The condition is it must be from top to bottom. It cannot be like this. In spherical symmetry you can cut this, ball will equal halves, but in radial symmetry you cannot cut like this. You can cut wherever side, but it must be on top to bottom, so we call it radial symmetry. And the biradial symmetry, same, we can cut from top to bottom, but there is only possibility of two planes, that's why we call it biradial. And like sea anemone, sea walnut, Ctenophora, sea walnuts, so these are the example of radial symmetry. So and this is the radial symmetry. And even though somehow there is also exception over there, in radial symmetry we have starfish, and even though starfish belongs to the Kynodermata, and these are the very modern organisms than platyhelminthes to the onward, but at larval stage or embryonical stage starfish shows the bilateral symmetry, but whenever it adults form they shows the radial symmetry. This is another exception in the radial symmetry. So onward, now you must have remembered, or you have to deliver faithfully forward, that radial symmetry, it is from top to bottom always, and those organisms that show the radial symmetry, that can sense the danger and food from 360, because they have the tentacles and then can sense the danger and food from 360 degree, and usually they are attached with any substrate. So this is about the radial and biradial symmetry. Now the third one is bilateral symmetry. More modern symmetry is the bilateral, and from the platyhelminthes to chordate, all are bilateral. Bilateral mean that there is only one plane, there is only one possibility to cut the organism to equal halves. But this is a question, what is the plane, what should be the plane? So it must be the sagittal plane. Sagittal plane, we will discuss planes in the plane lectures, like there is also the different planes, horizontal plane, transverse plane, vertical, and so on and so forth. and sagittal plane is the mid of the vertical plane, whatever the vertical plane which is along the anterior posterior axis and along the dorsoventral axis. So mid of the vertical plane is sagittal plane. Like I am the human species, we belong to the chordates, and there is only one possibility to cut us to equal halves. So we can cut like this? No, not at all, because this is not sagittal plane. Sagittal plane is somehow like this? Not at all, because this is also not distributing into equal halves. So mid of the vertical plane, like whenever we cut like this is the vertical plane, mid of the vertical plane like this. So if we cut the chordates or any organism that show the bilateral symmetry at sagittal plane, it would be divided into two equal halves. So this is all about the symmetry. So up to now we have discussed, or you have learned, the classification basis of the kingdom Animalia on the level of organization, on yes coelomic level, on the digestive tube level, on the symmetrical level, and the third last one is the on we can classify organism animals at planes level. So this is all about this, and inshallah in next video we will discuss about the coelomic basis. Thank you. Allah Hafiz. पता नहीं बंदी सी पे कि नहीं सी बंदी